Welcome back, everybody, to the Coach Robb Podcast Network, Navigating Amateur Motocross, episode number 22, brought to you by our good friends at Energy Fuel. We're going to be looking at how do we get ready for 2026, and we are beyond honored. Derek and I, we feel like we're at Santa at Christmas here with the man, the myth, and the legend himself, Mr. RJ Ricky Johnson. How are you doing, brother?
I'm fantastic. It's hard to believe it's December out here in California. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. It's about 78 degrees. So we might have who knows, we could have 2 mutters at Anaheim or 3 mutters, Anaheim, San Diego, and Anaheim. So we'll see what Mother Nature has in store for us. But yeah, I'm excited to be here because through my career of myself, doing it right, doing it wrong, doing it right, doing it wrong, and no matter what you do, when you're trying to go in, when you're trying to fill up a basket 100%, you're always either short or you're overflowing. You're short or overflowing. Trying to top it off absolutely perfect is really hard. And I think part of it is luck, but I think a lot of it now with what you're doing, Rob, and the science and what you're educating me on, because let's face it, in the 80s, we just got heart rate monitors, but we couldn't track them, and it was a really a major ordeal. So we were just learning about our heart rate and anaerobic thresholds and all the different stuff. And so we were guessing a lot, and a lot of it was no pain, no gain. The harder you work, the better, blah, blah, all that stuff. But now there's science to it. So you can go into this knowing if you're overtrained or undertrained, which we didn't have that in the past.
Yeah, Derek and I like to talk a lot about it. Why dyno a motor that's got 100 hours? You're just going to verify that it's tired, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes human performance so difficult is it takes 6 months to pivot from where you're at today to where you want to get to. And Derek and I talk a lot about this because people want to snap their fingers and they expect they could have a full prep race motor by Friday, right? And it's like, that's not how it works. This pre-planning is something that when I say we, Derek and I, we have struggled to just try to get people to understand we have to put together a strategy. We do have to put together a timeline. And, today we're going to be talking about getting ready for the new season. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but there's so many things, little things that you can do, nothing that's significant, just little things that will add up. And that's what we'll be diving in here today. Derek, just out of curiosity from your standpoint, if somebody approaches you, calls you today or shows up at the shop there, hey, I want to be ready for Daytona in March. I want to get ready for, spring nationals in April. Where in the world do you even begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have touched on this a little bit in some previous shows, but essentially that process would need to start now easily. And can we build you something in that time frame? No problem. We can build you an engine. But at the end of the day, there's a whole host of things that have to happen, just like on the body side of things, in order to truly get ready for whatever your event would be. So let's say that event's Daytona. We know that that's in March. The ideal situation is we build this engine, we get it right, we get it to you, and then you get to shake it down a little bit. And it's important that you do that, or let's say chassis or suspension. You should not be showing up on unridden, unproven, quote unquote, setups. And at the factory level, this changes a little bit. The process has evolved over the years. But if you're working toward, if your kid's not comfortable on what he's riding, there's no point in racing it. And so the same thing applies when you're doing race engines and when you're doing race suspension. You really want to start that process as early as possible. So I had that call the other day, wanting to get ready for next year. Ask them, what's your bike program? How many bikes do you have? What classes are you really chasing? All right, you're going for Loretta's. You should make it, based on your past history, what you're going to do. In my opinion, that process starts now. You get an engine in time to where you can have it ready and a little bit of test time before regionals and maybe put an area on it, make sure you're happy with that. And of course, if you're a multi-bike program, like some of these amateurs are now, okay, yeah, we really like this setup. We don't need to make any tweaks. Let's throw that into the regional race motor. So you build that ahead of regionals. And then you say, okay, this is probably your Loretta's and regional race bike. Let's make it dialed in. You need to put a little shakedown time, race regionals. Okay, it's good. And then, of course, whatever, maybe some bikes need freshen up, some don't. Like most of the 4-strokes we build are not have to be torn down every single race. So you're going to be able to put regionals and Lorettas on it. And we've talked about before, you're going to want to put an hour or two on that bike before Loretta's so that your kid is comfortable with the motorcycle, because it's really hard to go back and forth between separate bikes. And of course, that goes down the road we've talked before. If you have the budget, which ideally you want to have your practice equipment be very, very comparable to your race equipment.
RJ, how many hours did you like to have on a bike before you, or Let me rephrase the question. How many hours did you have on a bike before you felt like it was comfortable? Did you have a sweet spot?
You rode it to the starting gate. So we came from a different time. I used to go to Wednesday night races and race 3 classes. I'd ride a 125, 250, and the 500 class that I would ride was a Ben Albert replica 4-stroke that I would leave in 3rd gear the whole time. And so you had to jump from one to the other to the other. You could do the jumps on this, you couldn't do the jumps on that. Power delivery was completely different. Power valves were coming in. You know, Derek, you'll understand the old school, no power valve and stuff like that. It was, what do you want? Do you want bottom or top end? You can't have both. Now with electronics and valves and 4-strokes and now electric bikes, it's a complete linear power. So, but the thing is that when I first started, I was like everybody else. I thought the more it is, the better it is. I would get on a bike and if it was really fast, it's so fast, I have to ride it faster. You know what I mean? It's going to make me faster. But then what I learned is that, which I want to ask you, Derek, I'll jump back to this question in a second, but is on an amateur, not pro, not expert, but an amateur, how much faster is their modified or 105 time than their stock bike?
So great question. Yeah. And if I have spat in it, forgive me. I've gone in and out, but honestly, this is the saddest thing of the industry. So it puts me out of a job a little bit because I just like building fast stuff. The reality is the vast majority of amateurs are not faster on their mod equipment or their stock equipment. And it doesn't matter at what level. Like you can build a kit in 85 all the way to, let's say, a 112, and the power difference is unbelievable, right? There's literally a 35% difference in horsepower. So they should be, if the power was a limiting factor, they should be dramatically faster. But what we find is that most athletes, the amateur national winners, not so much the case, but the kids who are like 30th to 40th or even 20th to 40th, sadly, that difference is small. And I think it's a compounding of things. I mean, you nailed it. You're alluding to maybe smoother is faster. And I totally agree with that. And we'll touch on that in a minute. But it's sad. And of course, that talks me out of some work here and there. And I've also, the last 3 years, I have literally detuned some of our 85 packages because we found that on track, when they were fully built, they're just too much for the wheel size and the gearing, the way the kids want to ride them. They come on the pipe aggressively. You get a lot of wheel speed, you get a lot of, wheel spin. And then of course you're out of the gear really quick on a 2-stroke because it has a window of power. And so if we make more of that power, you're in the window for less time. And so it takes a really talented kid to really make use of that. And unfortunately, now granted, compared to your era, we're not even talking like go ride a non-power valve bike and these modern kids would have no clue what that was like. Right. That is the difference between bottom or top, and what you guys were chasing back then was meshing those two to find that perfect little, intermix of, okay, this is as much bottom as I can give up and as much top as I can give up. But yeah, to answer your question, not a lot.
Right. So when it comes to that, and this goes back to yours, how long does it take to get used to a bike? So I started racing full-time 500 in 86 because we ran Supercross, 250, and 500 nationals. So I got second behind David Bailey. The very first race of Redbud, Johnny and David whipped me the first moto. I was off on my suspension settings. I was just lost. I was trying to ride it like a 250. A lot of throttle, same way that guys, Deegan's rides a 250 and this and that. And you can't take that to especially those 500s because they have way more horsepower than the current 450s do now. Now you won't go as fast lap time as a 450, but it's just sheer brute horsepower. They were way more. So back to that, I was riding it. Every time they gave me more, I'm like, this is great. This is great. I got to ride it more. Then what happened at the second national in 1987, all right, this is a year later, I crashed pretty good in practice. I mean, pretty good one. Got up, shook it off, got on the bike, and I'm like, man, I must have knocked something loose because I'm ripping. Like, I feel good. I'm hauling ass through the corners, going back and forth. We come back in, we set it on the stand. They start pulling my bike apart. They go to take my pipe off. I'm like, don't touch it. It had a big dent in the header pipe. So what it did is it luckily detuned the bike so I could ride it more aggressive. And so from that day on, see, I was doing that. That's why I went to the pro circuit pipe, because it had better roll on and it didn't have the hit in the middle. If you watch now I'm taking a step back. If you watch my 86 season, Dave and I were back and forth, back and forth. I tried the upside down forks. He beat me. We went to Houston. I was leading, and we had the Honda Works pipe on there, and I came up short, boom, went over the bars, and I told I told Brian Lennis, I said, I got to ride the bike. So he drove back, drove all the 2 days, and then I started testing Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I won in San Diego. The reason I tell you that is that I was looking for the right smooth power to try to match the Yamaha power. But on a 500, I thought more is better. Once we detuned the bike a little bit, I could still get that same power, but I was 60 to 70% throttle, not 10 to 30%. And so that's what I think you're getting with what you're doing now. And these kids that are getting the bikes, you got to make that rideable power so that they're not hesitant. And then what I find is they start using the clutch as a crutch to hold the power back, not to encourage it. Like when you're on an 80, you got to keep it in that little power window and keep it going. But on 450s and 250s, especially when these kids are 150 pounds, if you just roll on the throttle, the power's there for you and there's no hold. So long answer to your short question, the more time you get on your race bike, the better. That's what, when I went to Honda, let me back up. When I was at Yamaha, we went to production bikes. Our same not so great bike is what we practiced on all week. So I knew exactly how it was going to twitch, how it was going to kick, how the power was going to hit, how the clutch hit, all the different stuff. It wasn't as good as a factory Honda or Kawasaki, but I was comfortable. Brock and I were comfortable right now because we rode on that same exact bike all week. So the more time you get, the better. But I say a true professional, a couple days, you should be ready to go. You should be able, especially with the engineering and telemetry and all the different stuff that you can find out where you're weak and where you're strong, you should be able to narrow it in. So I'm not going to take these guys, well, I'm still getting used to the bike. Come on, man. You're one of the top 10 best riders in the world, and it's taking you 6 months to get used to a motorcycle? To me, that's an excuse. I'm sorry, but that's an excuse. I mean, if I came to you and said, well, I'm struggling here, couldn't you look on a computer and go, well, you're less throttle here, you're revving the motor too much, you're bogging it, you know what I mean? Your mile per hour is slow.
I totally agree with you. So to jump in, you had so many great points, and I want Coach to jump in here. He's really good at picking out points, but I'm actually was going to, you said something that was dead on, and it's so hard to convey this to clients who think that power is the solution to their kid. I have worked with a lot of amateur championship winning programs and programs really close to that, like very consistently always at the front. And it's funny, like I'm working with a client here locally who is dead convinced that this other kid has a cheater bike, dead convinced. And I have seen the insides of this other bike, so I know that it's not. And that kid, now I will admit, when you see videos of this other kid who just won titles at Mini O's, the kid we're talking about, he rips hole shots on everyone. And it doesn't matter. I don't know what, there's either good starters and bad starters. He's a good one. And it looks like his bike's faster, right? But he's just executing all these things right. And that's what's hard to tell people is like, oh, look how he pulled there. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't see all the little things that went in for that to happen. He's getting traction and the right application of power and all these things. You said something that I would be critical of Tomac on. I have no place to be critical of Tomac. He's the best, one of the best guys in the sport, and he's been for a long time. But the way he rides the bike is just the way you described, which is he uses a shitload of horsepower and then limits the power with the clutch. And in my opinion, if I'm teaching someone or if I want someone to ride the right way, I want to go the other way. I like the Kinney way. I like the Chase and the Lawrence way, because to me, from an engineering standpoint, all we do is take all that extra horsepower we made and convert it to heat. We're slipping that clutch and building heat in the engine, which makes it really hard for his team and for the people around him to make that bike hold together. Now, granted, that's Tomac. It's his way. He's allowed to do it, and he wins races. But I agree with you. A lot of times when we make all this power, or let's say it comes in like you described, right at that hip where it comes in, the athlete's having to manage that power sometimes, and it's really hard to do. And then it ends up resulting in a slower lap time. Now, with the modern 4-strokes, I don't care how you build them. They're way more linear and broad than any of the 2-strokes were. So realistically, this day and age, I mean, kids can say they have an excuse, but compared to what you guys had to ride, or even a 125 of today or an 85 of today, the 4-strokes are just that next step closer to electric. And I think there is no excuse. I'll let Coach jump in here on his thoughts real quick.
Well,
I would actually like to ask RJ a question. I'm like you, Derek. He said something that piqued my interest. RJ, you were talking about the idea of jumping from a 125, 250, 500. Um, and in I've gotten scrutinized over this because I believe that four strokes create lazy riders. You could be you could literally be in third gear in a corner going a half a mile an hour, and if you slip the clutch, it'll just pull to the stratosphere. Where we grew up in an era where we called it being on the pipe, right? If you weren't in that sweet little spot, you could jump off the bike and run faster than the bike was actually going. And Derek and I have talked about the idea that learning how to ride a two-stroke in that very narrow power band teaches you to be a better, smarter. I think your racecraft is better. How, if we could take the past and bring it into the present, let's just say, and this is, I've got kind of a two-folded question. I talk to some kids nowadays and they won't ride a 125 two-stroke and a four-stroke at the same race weekend. They don't like to train on one and race the other. You were doing both. You're training on three different sizes. You're racing all three on the same given day. What would you recommend, or would you discourage it based on today's technology? If you could pull your past into the present.
Well, so if I was running teams and I was doing stuff, one of the things I would do is I would make the practice tracks less dangerous. I think you don't need this crazy stuff. You know what I mean? It's all technique. Like I used to say, jump for show, turn for dough. If you could rip turns and you get your run right, the jumps fall in place.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to jumping a really sketchy, quad section or something like that someone finally decides to do it, that's where I would say go back and be like Jean-Michel Bale. Find jumps that you can land in an absolute perfect spot, like Kevin Windham when he would do the transitions and shit like that. If you do that kind of stuff, play riding, but you do it in a safe manner, like jumping uphill, so if you land, unless you're Travis Pastrana and you go over the bars and land on your knees and stuff like that. But if you set your playground up to teach you the technique and get the body working, get the body, all the different stuff, and push yourself to where it's safer, I think you're better. Now, when it comes to riding, I feel that we're creating this box between the trainers and the coaches. And I'm very loosely when I say that, and I don't care what anybody says. Explain to me why you have him doing that. Explain why that's better. If you can't explain it, then don't just say it. Like when everyone says elbows up, that's a complete bullshit. Elbows up. Well, you know what elbows up do? They bring your body position forward, and it gets you in like a more of a running stance. So if your arms are back here, it forces you back and then you sit back. Now you're hanging off the back of the bike and you're holding on. But wait a minute. Ricky Carmichael is the so-called the GOAT, had detached muscles in his shoulder. He can't get his elbows up, never could, rode with his elbows down. Fastest guy in the world, greatest rider of all time, elbows down. How, you see what I mean? So there's certain things that people are just copycatting and doing, and that's what I appreciate. We appreciate what both of you guys are saying. Derek, you're saying maybe you don't need a $10,000 motor. Maybe we need to work on your shifting points and your revving points and your cornering points and your clutch release to get you faster. Then we can put the $10,000 motor under you and it works.
So funny you say this about mod bikes, not mod bikes. And I really hope that, and if I lost you, I really hope that this comes to fruition somehow, someday. Ken Roczen was just on the Carson Brown challenge with Travis Pastrana.
Yeah.
And then they had a Pastrana versus Ken Roczen on the 252 stroke. And I haven't actually watched the video all the way through. A friend sent me the clip. The clip was Travis saying, I bet you're just as fast on a stock bike as your factory bike. And Kenny says, oh, 100%. He goes, I bet you there's less than a couple, I think Travis said less than a second, and Kenny said even less than that, which is absolutely insane to hear a factory elite guy say. But a guy like Kenny, who is so adaptable and so talented and can and same with the Jet, who can ride around bike issues, like if it's a little soft here or whatever, they just go around that issue. Sure, Kenny's very particular on his bike. And I think when it's all right, we see a Kenny that's just untouchable. But at the end of the day, production equipment is so good, and especially 450s, right? Like they're just phenomenal. That the difference isn't that big. And that's one of the fastest guys on the planet. He's in the top 5, top 10, right? Of anybody who wants to line up. So you're 100% right. And we've talked on our show in nauseum about shifting right. We have multiple segments on this that I've talked about this, and I cannot even begin to describe how improperly almost every amateur does it. And it's so frustrating from my perspective because it's the easiest thing you can figure out. You want to go faster down the start straight, shift on time on your 2-stroke, and you will go faster. And I actually did a video on it. I haven't published it yet. I need to do a better job of the video. I sent the text message to Coach, however, of a dyno thing I did where I shifted a bike various amounts, but one of them was 500 RPM too late on a 125. 500 RPM too late equated to 1 second on my dyno from first through third. 1 second in just a straightaway because I shifted 500 RPM too late, which is like the difference between snapping your finger. That's how quickly their bike's going, right? And it's like that. And if I were to shift that bike there in front of a kid, they'd think I was lugging it. And it's like, no, you're shifting way too late. And they just don't understand that. Yeah, the power curve on a 2-stroke really noses over. Now, 4-strokes is a different ballgame, but how often do we see a guy in a 4-stroke hit the rev limiter? Well, that is limiting your speed. It stops the bike from going any faster than that. Every time you do that, you've stopped drive. And it's so hard to explain this to kids. And then they see the pros and Deegan, and they don't understand a couple things about those guys. Number one, their bikes rev a lot higher than yours. Number two, on top of that, there's sections where they just don't really want to go any faster. And that's, I'm just going to hit the limiter here, and that's okay through this bump section. But the reality is it's not applicable to an average amateur's bike that is not revving to 16,000 RPM on a 250F. Yours is revving to 14 or whatever it is. So there's a little bit of difference there. And then on top of that, the rebuild intervals and how you should ride your motorcycle, right? As an amateur, it's like, why do you want to go blow up your bike? You are not Hayden Deegan, and you're not getting your bike rebuilt every week. Your dad doesn't want to spend that bill. So, why are you trying to accomplish that? You had so many good points there. I really appreciate it.
Well, and Rob, I don't know if this is giving you the answers that you're looking for, but same thing applies is that so I'm racing trucks now. So how I qualify in my truck versus how I race my truck. Okay. Completely different. Now, because when I'm qualifying, I know where the turn is. I know where everything is, like a short course or a motocross or a supercross. And a lot of times I'll run it past and I do like 2 ugga-duggas, on the rev chip because we have a little bit of a delay on our shifter. So I don't want to upshift and then downshift again because that takes the time that little 1/10 of a second burst of speed that I get, I lose a 1/2 a second on shifting. So the same thing that I applied with Blake Baggett, I see these guys come off the gate on the 450s, and they want to grab third gear really quick. I'm like, no. So my routine for Blake was get as close to I don't care where it's at, get as close to the starting gate as you can and run second to where you hit the rev chip like 2 seconds. Because that shift, and that's where like Andrew Short was starting in third gear, and some of the other guys were starting in third gear, stuff like that, because they weren't getting that shift. I didn't like doing it because I wanted to get an elbow on a guy, so I wanted to make sure I got the jump. So I always started in second gear. I didn't want to be as patient in third because if you're against Lachine or Ward or Baylor or anybody, as soon as they got a nose on you, the race has already started. They're going to start messing you up. Likewise, I was very much doing the same thing because if I could shove him into the next guy, they clean each other off, and I go. So how I attack from the gate to the first turn is different than how I attack turn 1 to turn 2. And so when it comes to shifting at the right point and all the different stuff, I find that I think a lot of people either A, on a 2-stroke, shift too late, like you said, they're like, or they miss it, or on the 4-stroke, a lot of these short starts, you could just go second gear, get the position, and rev it out. You're not going to hurt the motor by.
No. And to elaborate on what you're saying at the elite level, at the pro level, and we do this, and the factory teams do it to a level that we can't do. They have start maps, and in those start maps, second gear goes a little bit higher in the RPM range. Then, so you can do exactly as you described, which is either maybe second runs to the turn. Typically in the 250 class, maybe in Supercross, that's sometimes possible, but outdoors, you'll see them grab third every time.
Yeah.
But it's to get that, all the teams are chasing this envelope. And of course, one team finds a way to reliably raise a little bit, and then some other team, man, we're getting pulled right. We're shifting third just before that guy, and we can see on video. So they start working on that. So over the years, it's just done this. They're all really close to each other. You can actually see it in some videos with Deegan this last 250 year and the year before, especially. They really had that dialed in. And I think there's some things they're doing within the bike that I won't comment on, but he would get that. And when he clicked third, I think, you're storing a lot of inertia up in some parts and pieces at that extreme RPM. And sometimes you'd see him click third and just get a huge advantage over his guys. And the amount of money that's going into that at the factory level, like just that singular focus, like you're talking about, is, I would say, as high, with the Lawrence program or the Factory Cali program, getting a good start nowadays is huge for those guys. I mean, if you start behind Jet, good luck beating them, right? So all these teams know that. And so I think that's, but you're dead on. I mean, and that's, it's hard to tell this nuance to an amateur. Hey, there's times where there's a straightaway where you can bang the limiter just before the corner, because it's not worth grabbing the next gear and then downshifting the 2 or the 1 that you need to grab. On the flip side of that, if there's a long straightaway and you're late on your shift from second to third, and then you're losing that drive, let's say it's a second to third to fourth straightaway, and you're late on your shift to third and you're late on your shift to fourth, you just gave up probably half a second a lap by not timing those shifts. So but you nailed it. You're on the money. It's just, there's nuance to this, and you have to really analyze the track and understand exactly what you mentioned.
So when I was with Jason Anderson, when he was on Suzuki and he crushed everybody at Loretta Lynn's, his dad was great. He goes, you take him to the starting line. Jason was one of my best students I ever had. The first time I met with him, a little side note, is we're out riding, and I see him look down at his hand, and I see something in his hand. It was wintertime, so he hadn't been riding much. I go, you okay? And he's like, yeah. I go, let me see your hand. Not blisters, gone. Blisters are peeled. He's bleeding. He's like, I'm okay. I'm like, you want to go? He's like, no, I'm okay. I'm like, this is the kind of kid that I love. I mean, he'll drown out the pain. He gets it. But when we went to Loretta Lynn's, I'm like, listen, man, you're a big kid and you're faster than everybody. There's no doubt, but you're not going to get the whole shot. There's no way on a 80 stock bike. Yeah, you're faster than everybody, but you're not going to get the whole shot. So I said, I'm going to start you all the way on the outside. And they're like, what? I go, here's why. If you're light and you can get to the front on the inside, because it's a real fast first turn, everybody bogs up on the inside. I said, so however good you come off the gate, these guys are going to come. You just go away from everybody, hold it wide open on the outside, and come in top 10. That's all I want. Get to turn 2 through in the trees, top 10. Now let's pass one guy a lap, not all 10, because that's what you'll do. Let's just do one guy a lap, and then you'll be in front, and now put a second a lap on everybody, because we have other classes to do. And it was so awesome working with the Andersons, because the mother and father were supportive of what I was pushing. Jason was like, whatever we need to do. So to your point is that if you are big or if you are small, a Mike Alessi, who was that kid knew, I see he's a man now, but that kid knew right where to shift. What you're saying about that, having that feel of, same thing with James Stewart, getting whole shots on a 125 against 125 two-stroke against 254 strokes. Impossible, but James did it because everything was right on the money. So with that being said, is that sometimes in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to get a whole shot. Me at Mammoth at a 185 wasn't going to happen on a 125. That doesn't mean I'm not going to pass 8 people down the hill. But so you gotta manage your whole race program, just like we're talking here. Fitness and how fast. What do my lap times end up at the end of the race versus at the beginning of the race? I need to talk more to Rob. Right, I'm getting killed on the starts. My motors are seizing. I got to talk to Derek. Okay, my technique is wrong. I'm missing jumps. I'm my arm pump, this and that. I need to talk to Rick. You see what I mean? So our life is a racer is not is it's the same cosm as a motocross race.
I like what you said earlier about explaining something. If you can't explain it, why are we doing it? And I agree with you, like the elbows up. I was just talking to a group of guys about this weekend, and I'm like, look, I don't actually know the science reason for it. You gave a good example that helps you can get forward, but if you have bad shoulders or whatever, it may not be the right scenario. And there are times where I think leveraging wise, you might need it. But at the end of the day, there have been a whole slew of French guys who've come over and never ridden that way, Villeman being one of them. And of course, there's been more. Like, like all the French have had a little bit of a not that technique. I say all the French, a lot of them lately.
Yeah.
You're dead on, right? Like it's not absolutely necessary. And if you go to mountain biking and the downhill and the enduro style racing, those guys are the exact opposite of motocrossers. Elbows in and low, and that whole thing is totally different in that world. And so it's proof that on the same two wheels with things that we need to do, there might be different ways to do it. I think some of it has to do with getting your hands on controls and right where you push your hands and your thumbs and stuff like that. Like we don't want to be loading our thumb really hard. So if our elbows are low and in, we might be doing that. But maybe you want some pressure out here. There's things like that. But at the end of the day, if the guy can't give you a really solid reason why you have to figure this out, or can't give you some reasons to figure it out, or scenarios, I call it tools in the toolbox. Me and Rob have talked about this. You need to throw a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox, be it how to shift your bike or how to ride technique wise or how to do whatever it is, so that when you encounter a situation, you have the right tool for the job. And I think that that's a skill set that trainers should do and coaches like Coach Robb should do. And myself as as what we do, our job is to give you the tool, the motorcycle that can allow you to be successful. I can't make you be successful, but at the end of the day, that's what our job is to do.
Correct.
The ironic part about all of what we just talked about is we haven't spent any money yet. Learning how to switch gears on a bike, learning, like my big pet peeve is when somebody says a bike handles like garbage. And I'm like, okay, what would you like it to do that it's not currently doing? I don't know. It just doesn't handle right. Well, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not an engineer, but I can't find, I don't know in the manual on how to fix it. Right. If you don't know what you want, stiffer, faster, speed up, slow down the rebound, I don't know what you're looking for. On the physiology side, what's always funny is when you get somebody that complains of arm pump, they never get it in practice. But then when we go racing, ironically, Rick, like you were saying earlier, it's kind of like a built-in excuse. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always something else's fault. Probably the most profound thing Jet said last year when they were struggling to set up that bike for indoors was he said, we finally got the bike to where now I can train on it. We're not working on setup. I get to go to work on when I get back to the compound. Then he was also, another thing that I thought he said that I think most people missed was he said, the bike will never be perfect. It'll be better over here and not so good over here. And I have to learn how to ride it in both situations. I was like, somebody please put that. If that's not on the highlight reel this week, that's what needs to be on the highlight reel. Your number one guy saying the bike's never perfect. It's going to be a little better over here and a little less over here, but it's my job as a pro to ride the thing. I'm thinking, gosh, if I was working for Jet, I'd be a happy man because he's not blaming that 1% of the track that it doesn't handle well, whether it's tire selection, suspension setup. In my wheelhouse, what's a perfect day? You've told your mechanic how you want the bike set up. The bike is balanced. It does exactly what you want. You hear about Tomac, he wants it to squat when he comes out of the corner. Okay, so you've got all these little nuances that the bike is now doing. Now you race that bike 100% to its capability. The track pushes back, and you're fit enough to be able to handle that for 30 plus 2 as a pro. At the amateur levels, 10 laps at Loretta's, what is that, Derek, at the end of the day, 21.
They keep it right at 20 minutes these days, right around that number on the quote unquote premier classes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, that is pretty definitive, right? It's a tight track. Loretta's is a very tight track. You know what condition the dirt's going to go. It's going to get baked. It's going to get deep. It's going to get blue grooved. It's going to get goat trailed. It's going to have multiple lines. The lines aren't always going to go straight. Thinking about that left-hander by the mechanics that goes to the left. Yeah, it doesn't even go straight.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
But you are surprised when you go there and those conditions arise when those conditions have surfaced for the last 25 years.
Hey,
See,
Rick,
I just go, what? How are you surprised at that? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Derek.
No, you had said something about bike being perfect. So I think were fortunate to earn your spot onto factory Honda at one point in, at the, what would you call it, the prime of your career? Like as your client ended up there?
I was with Yamaha from 81 to 85. And then, then when I switched to Honda, I went there because even though we all went to production bikes, I knew their commitment. So anyways, go ahead.
I was to say, so you have the opportunity to work with what was considered part of the Honda heydays on the tail end of that, but still, in my opinion, to this day, the production Hondas were leap years ahead of the other brands all the way till the late 90s, essentially mid 90s. And, but there had to be days your bike wasn't perfect. And then there's days where your bike was really good. But what was your mentality going into that? If you're chasing a setting or a bike, your job was to win races, whether the bike's perfect or not. I mean, you mind touching on some of that?
Absolutely. And what you're saying about how Jet said, now that I can ride it, now I can work on me. And I want to give credit where credit is due. And I think the king of get it close and I'll make it work was Ricky Carmichael. He was the rider that, because the way Jeannie ran him and just go, 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 go. It was more important for him to know what that bike was like because he was short, cut seat, bars back. He made it to where he could survive any war. Okay. So he wasn't trying to find 2/10 in lap time here and there. He knew if he just rode it faster that he'll be better. So for me, I was more critical than him, but like Brock Glover he would sit there until the sun is going down, making small adjustments with shock guys, with motor guys, with gearing. And he was just a fanatic about it, but he was really good. I mean, a lot of progress came from the stuff that he would do. Bailey was the same way with Cliff White, very meticulous about what he wanted to do. Same thing with Jim Felt and Johnny O'Mara. With Brian Lunas, I was like, let's get it close because it's going to slick up. Let me run out of the line. A lot of these guys, they go to let's say the pros go to the Supercross track and they run that one line and then they chase that ghost all day. And they're trying to go faster and they find it faster. And maybe they floated a whoop or rolled something, who knows what. But I was always, let me go try the insides. Let me try the outsides. Let me try this. Let me try that. Okay, now I know that I can ride as close as I can to 100% and maybe go 102% every now and then, kind of swappy and shit like that. But I know what I have underneath me. That was the important thing. I didn't have to have the best. I had to depend on it. If it was gonna do this through the whoops, I didn't worry about that. I knew it was gonna do that every time. Now, if it was really bad, that's one thing. But so to your answer, that's why I went to Honda, because when we showed up to test, we had multiple fork settings, multiple shock settings, multiple linkage settings, multiple transmission settings, everything that we could do within the rules of it's a stock bike, but you could change this, and this. Honda changed this. They did everything. That's why we were I was not the beginning, but I was in the heyday of Honda. You know what I mean? So when we went, I think David won in 85 and Johnny won in 84. Anyways, we went back and forth on the different stuff. But like in 86, we were 1, 2, 3 in both 120 or 125, 250, 500 and Supercross. And then Stanton, then McGrath. And so the thing kept going until they went to that aluminum chassis. They took a stretch and no one liked it. And it was something that was difficult to ride. But back to what Robb is saying, and I see it, I get it from a lot of different people. I don't like it. That's like me calling Robb after the 1,000. I'm tired. Fix it. Well, yeah. How much did you drink? I don't know. How much did you eat? I don't know. How much did you sleep? I don't know. But what? Tell me what to do. Well, I can't tell you what to do because I don't know what you're doing to fix it. So I've seen that a lot. And the shock guys suspension guys are always doing their best. They're doing their absolute best to make it better for you. But when you ask for a change, they have to make a change. It might suck. Okay. You might go test. You know this, Derek. You might try 10 things. One thing works. 9 of them don't. That's a successful test. Because now
you learned what didn't work. Yeah.
You have 9 things. You go, we did that. You might come back at a later time and go, hey, remember that time we tested those 10 things and number 8 was terrible? But you know what? Let's try it here on the sand track. That might be what we're looking for. It's things like that. And so when you go to a restaurant, you say, I don't like the food. Okay. The guy who puts more spice and more salt, you're like, it's had too much spice and too much salt to start with. He didn't know that. Or it's too hot, or it's too spicy, or it's too cold, or you got to give somebody a guideline to fix what it is. And that's riding coaches and motor builders, suspension builders, riding, physical coaches. You got to get them in the parameters. So if anyone's listening to this, take some effing responsibility for yourself and give these people some information. You don't have to be dead on. Like, I do not get into shim size and all that different stuff. I make a very simple, this is the way I do everything on my deal. I make it very, very simple to read 2 ways. My graph is basically, I'm going to put 100 here, 0, 100. So when I do that, everything I do is off of that. Motor wise, I do it RPM versus that. So if I have a 2-stroke, it's going to say it's going to have a power like that, not much power, and it's going to come on hard. Old school 4-stroke is going to have power like this. It's going to come in hard, give you a bunch of stuff here low in the RPM, but it's going to peter out. This is the zone, but actually this always goes like this. So when this starts to dip down is where you're saying guys aren't shifting soon enough. Okay. When it comes to a shock, I say the same thing here versus there. If it's, I want it to ride softer, I want it softer here, and then I want it to come up and then go linear. All right. So I got real cushy at the beginning, but then as it gets further up in the stroke, it wants to go. So I might say, you know what? I want more support in this zone. Okay. I don't tell them how to do it. I don't tell them, say, give me more bleed on this, or give me more air pressure, or give me this or that. I can do a lot of that on the truck shocks now, but let the pros do what they do. And this is what I've enjoyed about working with Robb. And this is a totally unsolicited deal, is that we've been talking a lot lately, going over what I don't know. I'm a 61-year-old guy that's beat up, broken down, and I'm trying to be the best that I can be. But I'm guessing, I'm trying this diet. I'm trying the keto diet. I'm trying the protein diet. I'm trying the all pasta diet. I've tried everything, like everything. And sometimes one works and then the other one doesn't work, but I don't know. Like, I just don't understand. I just don't understand it. So I go to him with that. So hearing what you're saying, Derek, I'm sorry I'm taking too long here, is that I like the fact that you're asking your riders, it's not just give me more money, I'll give you more power, adjust yourself to it. You're saying, let's figure out how to make you better so that you can utilize, I'm just using that number, this $10,000 motor, other than, well, I need that because Bobby has it and he's whipping my ass every week. Well, let's be honest. Bobby's a much better athlete. Bobby trains, Bobby practices starts. Bobby does all these things to be ready on the weekend, and you're screwing around, chasing women, or girls, or playing video games and not getting sleep and not doing all the different things that you need to do. So don't know
on your point. Yeah, I love what you said, and you nailed so many good points, and we're happy to hear you continue on however long you want, because all of what you said there was excellent. And the frustrating part for me, and me and Rob have talked about this, is I think Americans have become less innovative in many ways, less involved in their knowledge, less involved in their programs in every facet of life. And not to get into the medical industry, but the medical industry now is like, what can I do to go to my doctor? And when they say, hey, this, realistically, it's diet and exercise. And the guy's like, yeah, I can't change that, dude. I'm not going to change how I eat. I'm probably not going to work out. Can you just give me a pill to solve this problem? And we have a whole industry around that. And so the same thing applies to on your bike. It's like a lot of people think that, oh, well, so-and-so went to so-and-so shop, spent all this money and they're winning, so I'm going to go do the same thing. On one side, that's really smart. You see that that's winning. You know it's capable. That's why you buy it. But then you buy it and you're like, well, I'm not winning. What's the deal? They must have something I don't have. And it's like, no, what they have that you don't have is the athlete. And I hate to say that. I wish that that wasn't the case. But unfortunately, it takes the other side of the equation there. It's not just the bike. And somehow today, this started, in my opinion, in the Ryan Dungey era. He blamed the bike all the time when his success wasn't there. And so it has pervaded to every other athlete, every other pro. Today was a little off. I need to go work on the bike. You would hear that. And I'm like, in my mind, I was always blown away because I'm like, your job is to sell that motorcycle. I'm okay with you being a little critical of it. But the way I think the Lawrences do that is right. I made a bad decision with the team on a shock setting. I'm not going to make that mistake next week, but it's on me. Yeah, because it really is down to the athlete, right? Like at the end of the day, you have a staff at every single team. Like, shim stacks and shocks well enough to understand that there's more shims and less shims. There's more bleed and less bleed. We can add some linkage or not. We can put a shock spring in it or not. Every suspension guy in the world who's passionate about it knows these things. These are not that complicated. The hard part about it is getting the athlete to give you the feedback that you need to get the setting they want. And I've heard, you've probably been a part of this where you were chasing something in a test and you went in circles. You just couldn't find a setting you're happy with. The suspension guy's like, dude, I've thrown every dart at the dartboard. You've tried every setting all over the board. We really need to hone in on something you like. And sometimes, there might be a bike issue, but sometimes it was a you issue. You just didn't quite have the answer yet or hadn't molded through what it was. But ultimately, that shock guy gave you everything under the planet you wanted. You just, you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily the shock guy's fault. I'm not passing the blame for myself. Our job is to make things work. And that's a challenge, right? But yeah, that just blew my mind. And now it's pervaded to amateurs where if it's not if they don't get the success they want, it's the bike. And I'm just like, an anecdote to this real quick, and I'll let you jump in. On Pulp MX, I think Dan Truman was on there. And so he's got the compound and he's got the Lawrences out there and a bunch of amateurs who are pretty fast and some who aren't, winning yet, but they got a whole slew of people out there. So Cade Johnson was out there and an opportunity arose with Kawasaki because one of the Team Green kids ended up going to Star. So this bike was budgeted for and built and everything's ready for an athlete that wasn't riding it. So Dan made some calls and Team Green agreed to let Cade ride this bike. And ultimately, when he gets this bike, I'm willing to bet Cade thought, man, this is a solution. I got beat by that bike a few times this year, and I beat that bike a few times. But man, I've got a great bike. I know it can win because last year Drew Adams won on that bike, and there's a long history of Team Green kids winning. And ultimately, I think I even heard some feedback from some place like saying, oh, wow, the bike's not what I thought it was. It's not the reason the kid was beating me. And then when you hear that feedback of the team, you're like, okay, then what you're telling me in reality is that the reason you lost to so-and-so, and I'm, piecing this together, is that kid was better than me. That's ultimately what you're saying because you have his motorcycle and he beat you on it. And so your job, and I think that for a lot of athletes, that's a wake-up call, which is you go to the grass is greener side of the fence. All of a sudden you realize the grass isn't that much greener. Now it's on you, but because you learned it's on you, you now bear down and you go do what you got to do. And to Cade's credit, whether the bike was better or not, he did come away with a title at Mini-O's and some great rides and all that kind of stuff. So that's the challenge we have, right? To me, it's just, yes, the bike's important, but production bikes are pretty darn good.
Well, and so two things. One is a comment that Jet made that I loved. And two, when I was a racer, motocross, my job was to win races or to sell product. So I had a philosophy because my dad, I said some stuff and things that my dad was hard on me, but he made me who I was. And he pushed me. He said, I want you to be better than everybody at everything. It's not realistic. It's the same way when he taught me how to fist fight as a little kid. Kid wanted to, true story. I would box kids on the street, and if they were too big, they'd get on their knees. Well, get the shit knocked out of you by, a 12-year-old kid and you're 8. You know what I mean? It's a big difference. And he would say, if you're going to fight somebody, act like you're going to kill him. Like, I don't want to kill him. He says, you're not going to kill him. You're not strong enough. But if you have that attitude and you go at them with that kind of attitude, you're blah, blah, blah. So the reason I tell you that is that he pushed me to be the best marketing guy, to be the most style, to try. I did a lot of dorky shit. I get that. But I was trying to be stylish. I was trying to be smooth. I was trying to be all these things. So I had a philosophy that I said was, if I win, I credit everybody else. I credit my mechanic. I credit my suspension, my tires, my motor, my manufacturer, my girlfriend, my parents, my trainer, when I win, it's everybody else wins. When I lose, regardless of what happens, it's on me. Because it ends. It just ends. Because if I'm up on the podium and I say, my Honda sucked and my suspension was terrible and God, I got no traction, my tires sucked, you just throw everybody in the whole circle into a frenzy And what do? They start protecting themselves and finding an excuse why it's not their fault. But if you come in and you end it, and now you come back and someone goes, you know what? Rob says, it's my fault. I pumped too many calories in you. You know, Derek comes in and goes, you know what? I leaned the bike out. I thought it was going to work, but whatever the case may be, people start to take credit for it. Now, how I relate that back to Jet Lawrence, when we were watching him at the National, he came around that inside and we're up like that. And they said, oh, what happened? He says, I just asked too much of the rear tire and I went down. He didn't blame Dunlop. He didn't blame the motor hit too hard. He didn't blame the traction, whatever, mapping was wrong. I asked too much of the back tire and it bit me. I'm like, and that is why, like, I was at Donations and I was watching him, and Hunter, I got to give it, Hunter flat put it to Jet. Jet was faster in the time practice and stuff, but he had a better track. He was out in the first round and Hunter was in the second round. Hunter was on fire, all right? He was on fire that day. But anyhow, watching how these guys go about their stuff. And I watched Tomac chasing Jet, and Tomac has a technique that works good on a certain style of track. Let's say a hard pack track that has berms that you can hit hard and bounce off it. So they use that hard route like that to like springboard you down the straightaway. Now let's back up to 1990 when I broke my hand and I had to race Jean-Michel Bale. He was 3 seconds faster than me at Unadilla. I came in thinking, I know I'm faster than everybody. I'm blistering. I'm wide open the whole time. And they go, you're 3 seconds off of Bale. I'm like, what? I'm like, is he cutting the track? It's like, what? There's no effing way it's humanly possible to go 3 seconds faster than I'm going. I'm wide open everywhere. But then I got up out of the way so he couldn't see me, and I watched what he was doing. He was meeting the berm earlier, softer on the berm, riding through the berm, and he's going, and he was lighter, so he was carrying more speed. I'm coming in way faster, inch of speed, hitting the middle, and so I'm trying to springboard off the turn like Tomac does, but the berm's not there. And that's the thing that, going back to what you're saying, I feel that Jet is so much better than everybody at this point on any given day. Certain days, if the track's right, Tomac is there. Certain tracks, if other people are there, but on typically he's better because he communicates better. So I met him when he was 18. He was out at Paula practicing. I was training somebody else. I went up, complimented him. I was talking to Johnny and Trey and this and that. And I said, you know what? And he was a sweet kid, didn't know who the hell I was. And that's irrelevant. That's not the point. I said, you know what? I really admire what you're doing. And he goes, oh, what's that? And I said, well, because Johnny was like Christian Craig, very smooth, very soft suspension, very light on the bike. Bailey was very smooth, and I was more of a hammerhead. I brute force. That was my, I had good technique, and I adapted, but my biggest thing was I was big and strong and I hammered shit. I said, I feel you're the right combination of everybody. You hammer stuff when you need to, and you're very smooth when you need to. And he says something that blew my mind. He goes, yeah, I was out testing, and Trey said, because Trey's the main Honda rider, test rider for Honda. He says, on Trey's bike, he's like, I can't quite feel the front tire the way I want through the middle transition of the corner. So I like my setup. It's a little softer. And I thought, the world is in trouble, because I wasn't thinking that way until late 1987 and 88. And I was 23 years old, and I was well into my pro career. And that's the kind of feedback that he's given engineers. And now you have the Honda engineers that I feel are definitely the best, or some of the best. That's a hard combo to give, because you're saying he's able to give that feedback.
So you go ahead, Coach. I've been talking too much. Go ahead.
No, not too much at all. Rick said something earlier, and it's right in line with what you just said there at the end, RJ. When you were talking about pushing it to that 102% and it starts to really kick out, how would we, because we have, obviously this is an amateur program, right? We want the listeners to learn from what we've all learned collectively, and we want to see people get fitter, faster, and be able to ride longer, safer. How much would you contribute? You've got the bike the way you want it, and now you're pushing it to that 102% just to kind of see what overriding the bike looks like and what the bike does, versus how much of that is you're still not sure what the bike will do. I don't know if I'm asking that question correctly. If you go back to that where you were saying, hey, I'm going to just blitz those whoops and I'm going to ride it beyond that 100%, are you doing that to figure out what you want the bike to do? Or do you feel that you can only do that after you're 100% comfortable? Because I find that's a very muddled area for a lot of young developing riders. They're not sure what they want. They're not sure how to find what they want. And then they're stuck in the middle that they're overriding the bike given those conditions. How would you educate a parent? How do we teach these younger riders how to learn that?
Well, I think in that, and I'll go back to what I did, but I'm still going to compliment Jeannie Carmichael and Ricky Carmichael. So when Ricky would fall in the left-hand turn, Jeannie would have him do 20 minutes of, I watched it, a left-hand turn over. Now, was she teaching him technique? No, she wasn't. But by him doing it over and over again, he's like, oh, I'm gassing it a little too soon, a little too late, a little too soon, a little too late, a little too hard, a little too soft. So he's learning something. So if these amateurs would break away and work on something specific, is it whoops? Let's do some whoop stuff. I used to do that with the Suzuki guys. Screw the whole track, because now I got you. You're winded. You're worried about this. You've messed up that, and chase this lap time. No, let's go on tenths of a second through this whoop. Now let's do these 2 turns, okay? Because now we're kind of safe because our energy is there, our strength is there, and I'm not getting anaerobic. I'm not doing this, and I'm not trying to increase my time. I'm strong. I'm ready. It's like weightlifting versus cycling. I'm not draining the tank. I'm taking a break in between, getting my heart rate down, and then I'm giving those maximum things. So I hope this isn't too long of an answer for you, Coach, but is break it down. What was wrong with the race? Guy, I was getting past coming to the corners. I go do braking drills. I'd set up cones and go, you got to go wide open until I say stop, and see how short you can stop. That's going to be your braking drills. My starts were terrible. Put more emphasis on practicing some starts. I don't say do it 100 starts, because then there's no sense of urgency. But then again, I don't say do one and go, well, let's see how it turns out the next weekend. You know what I mean? It's not that either. So the thing that, if you got a problem, I always say, just fix what was wrong. Even if I have my best day and I won, let's say I got whole shots and I won by 40 seconds, which I had those days. I still look back and go, you know what? I could have been better here. I could have been better there. You know what? I was just burnt out. All I want to do, like we talked about on the starting line, all I was thinking about was getting in my rental car and go to the airport to go home. I wanted the race over. I didn't want to be, I have the best job in the world, and I'm going, I wish it was over. And I see that from a lot of people, and including myself sometimes. So I would go, you know what? I need to lighten everything up a little bit. I need to do some more free riding this week, maybe go to the beach one day, maybe go out with my friends, or you know what? I was tired. Well, let's push cardio a little harder at the beginning, then taper my training. So you know what I'm saying? The long answer to a short question is fix the problem, find out what the problem is, no matter what it is, and work on fixing that. Then that's going. So if you work on trying to get everything, mind, body, soul, motor, suspension, tire, blah, 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 at 100%, because you're never at 100%. You never are you at 100% all the time. Like looking for the perfect lap. I was racing trucks, and they go, wow, look at all these. If we put all your best section times together, you're going to be 2 seconds faster. I'm like, well, I blew that turn after that. I did this, I did that. But trying to get as close to 100%. And so for these amateur riders, the reason I say that is I don't see enough emphasis on basics, on just being a good rider. I did braking drills every week. Every week. I would go as fast as I could go, and just to be comfortable losing that front wheel. I would also go in a big flat gravel parking lot, and I would sit on the back, and I would try to see how long I could skid the front wheel like a
That's a hell of a drill.
yeah, it's just, and then it starts to go, then I let off, and then I grab it back, I let off and grab it back. And it's like, you get comfortable with that. You get uncomfortable with a very uncomfortable thing. So I got more comfortable hitting people or being hit. I would make a parameter on a flat area, and I would get someone, we play tag. You can't hit in the foot peg. You can't hit in front of the foot peg. You had to hit the back tire. So I learned it running into people. And also when you're being chased, it's a different fear. And when someone's all over your ass, you're like, oh, trying to run away. So these things that there's a lot of tools here, but people just don't utilize it. They go to Coach Robb and go, what power drink do I need to give me all the energy I need? They go to Derek and go, what's the new piston from whoever, Wiseco, I'll just say them, probably not, but anyways, from Wiseco, that's going to make my bike 10 horsepower faster.
But here's something that I'm always struggling with, because I'm very big on balance. You've got to work hard, you've got to play hard.
Yep.
And it's interesting. If you're working hard and you're playing hard and you're winning, it's perceived as the perfect combo. When you're working hard and you're playing hard and you're not winning, then you're not working hard enough. And it's a struggle for me, because I could give 5 people the exact same program and get 5 different results. Derek could do the same thing with a motor. He could do the same thing with suspension setup. And I really appreciate your insight, RJ, because you've done a lot of coaching on top of all the racing that you've done. I've been very honest with you. You made a comment. You said, Rob, it's your job to teach. It's their job to learn. And I asked permission to be able to use that going forward, because I can't emphasize that enough. Now, I recognize as a teacher, until I put it in a format that you understand it, you're not going to understand it. And that's where communication comes in. I have no problem. Some people like to learn by looking and watching a video. Some want to read it. Some want to hear about it. Some want to integrate all 3. No problem. That's why we have print, video, audio, right? What I get, and I sound like I'm beating a dead horse on this, Derek, because we've said it a zillion times. There is no magic elixir, right? If you're balancing hard work and you're enjoying, like I ask all my athletes to take 1 day off every week. I ask them to take 1 week off every 6 weeks. Now, when I say take the week off, I'm saying, when did you cross the line that when you swung a leg over your motorcycle that now you train, versus we all got into motocross because we enjoyed riding? When did that day come? Go back to, and RJ, you mentioned earlier, go ride in the dunes, go play ride. Well, if you're in a bad spell, if you will, you're kind of in a low zone, and you tell one of these moto dads, your rider just needs to go play ride. Act like he's doing a photo shoot. Oh, he needs to toughen the F up. We're not winning anything. Well, have you thought about you're not winning because he's not having fun? Everything's training. Like Derek said, I don't want to put myself out of business, right? I say this all the time. Structure creates results. People enjoy results. And then people hate structure when the results require responsibility. That's where it takes a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting the way that you said that, because if I encourage to have a day off or encourage to be lighthearted, hey, right now, today, for whatever reason, and there's usually a reason why. You said it earlier, RJ, probably tired, dehydrated, hungry.
Yeah.
Those usually contribute to why an athlete is off on a given day. We can fix that tomorrow, but right now, you've already taken the time to come out to the track. What's the best thing you can do? Go to that turn track over there. Keep the wheels on the ground and keep it safe. Have fun. Don't pull a stopwatch out. Just go have fun. Ride your dirt bike. I just think, what would you recommend to a parent who, if you're over here, they want you over here, and if you're over here, they want you over here? And obviously, you've seen it on both sides as a racer and as a coach.
So a couple things to clarify what we were talking about, and I tell people this. So, like for instance, when I get a new bunch of military guys, I say, okay, guys, here's the deal. Shocker. 1 finger on the brake, 2 fingers on the clutch. So I say to Derek, how many fingers on the brake?
1 finger on the brake,
How many fingers on the clutch?
2 fingers on the clutch.
I just taught you how to do that. Now, when you get on the bike and you've ridden a Harley every day and you have to use 4 fingers on the clutch or 4 finger, what are you going to do?
You're going to do all 4.
4 fingers and 4 fingers. So I've taught you what to do, but you haven't learned it yet. You haven't learned to do it yet. That comes with repetition and doing that. So that's a massive thing. The other thing is that we need to raise the next generation that verbalize and if we want to be the next Jet Lawrence, we have to start training these kids to communicate. Use, like they said, use your words. Don't scream. Don't holler. Don't throw your helmet. Don't storm off and grab your phone and start Instagramming bullshit. tell me what it is. And so the biggest thing that I've learned from the elite special forces guys, and I'd heard a term one time, and this is something that I want you guys to take to your training. When you're done, simple question: what's your takeaway? Right. So if we talk about this at the end of the show, we all say, what's our takeaway from this show? For one, I'm going to talk about, well, with Derek, I'm going to say, you know what? From just real brief, is that he's not an proponent of just hammering and more is better and all the different stuff. He understands the technique of shifting, of right proper RPM and all the different things. And then my takeaway from Robb is that here's somebody that's not so rigid, that is willing to structure a training program to make the individual better, not, okay, come in and do 3 sets of 10 and do this to failure and blah, blah, blah. He's willing to work with you and adjust. So for you guys, I would like you to start adapting that into your training with these guys. When you're done, what give me 2 takeaways. That's all. When a guy comes in off of, he's out, does a practice thing, does 5 laps, comes in, excuse me, everything doesn't work. Blah, 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 blah. Well, what's your takeaways? Blah, blah, no. Use your words. Why are you so upset, and what sucks? Well, I can't clear the triple. Okay. So you're saying that it doesn't have enough bottom? No, okay. It doesn't have enough top? But just give me your takeaways. I hate the Kawasaki. I hate this, or I like this, or I like that. You never know what these takeaways can be. And sometimes it's not what you think. The takeaway might be over here. Takeaway is the track's deteriorating really bad and I can't touch the ground. Okay, there we go. Should we take 2 pounds of air pressure out to get better traction instead of trying to give them more horsepower? You see what I mean? So getting people to communicate a little bit. Don't tell me, I need, you know what? Gosh, that third shim, this is Brock Lever. That third shim on the stack needs to be 0.001 thinner, and that's going to give me more blah, blah. I'm like, I don't have the capacity in my head to do that. I'm telling you, when I gas it hard, it does this, and I use sounds and all the different stuff. But the biggest thing that I do is, what are my key takeaways? And that just, you get rid of the noise, and it comes back to finding something for you to fix or for you to fix.
We've commented on this in the show a little bit a few times, and you've nailed it. And so basically, I try to give advice to, unfortunately, my buy-in with my clients nowadays has decreased a little bit from when I first started my business. Back then, it's like one client and you're all in. Doesn't matter if they're first or last or this or that, like you're new to business. And now I've been at it for so long that I don't have that same level of, I don't know how to put it. It's kind of like your dad and your son, your first son, and then your dad and your second and third and fourth and fifth. Like, they just don't have the same level of attention, and because they realize that you can tell your son everything, but they may or may not take that advice. With your first son or first daughter, you drive it home. And oftentimes that makes it work, but it creates this friction, right? So I had years ago, to your point, I guess what I was getting at was, I try to advise people to say, hey, you should go to the track with a purpose, or you should go to your training function. So ahead of time, I have an idea of why I'm out here doing this. Is it to train at this? Is it to train at that? Is it whatever it is, it has to have a purpose. And then number 2, I totally agree with you. And I think the military does an amazing job at this. I have some clients and friends. I'm in Military City, USA. I'm next to San Antonio. So I get to meet a lot of them, and they love to ride. A lot of them love to ride. But the way their training works is like, all right, let's have a debrief. Just like you said, what was my takeaway from this experience? What did I learn? Especially these elite level pilots and fighter pilots. Every single aspect of that has to be briefed ahead of time. Mission completed, whatever the mission is, be it training or a real mission, and then a debrief. And it's how you get better because you analyze what happened. And I love what you said there. You said it so well. And I think if every athlete journaled, I try to tell us the new ones, look, you don't have to journal about your life and your personal emotions and your girlfriend and your boyfriend and whatever, but journal about your racing, a journal about your mission today, how your training went, how you feel, journal about the track. If you're testing, journal what you tested. You may not know the ins and outs, but talk to Derek. I said it felt a little squishy. So he went stiffer. And then I found out that when it went a little stiffer, the squishiness went away, but I started losing traction in certain little hard pack areas or whatever. Write that down. And then he said, well, why don't we try half a pound less pressure to make up for the difference? And oh, this worked really good. And well, for example, I lost some front end grip when we were a little stiff from the front. And so he said, maybe we should try raising the rear of the bike just a little bit to put more weight on the front. Oh, wow. Then this happened. Now you have a notebook of settings for yourself to reference to, and then helps you be better at testing in the future, because in the future, you're going to go to your guy and be like, hey, I'm encountering this on the track. And you remember when we raised the rear of the bike 2 mils and that problem went away? You think we should try that today? I think you're right. I forgot about that. That's a really good memory of you in your test session. Let's try that. That's a great idea. Or he says, no, you got that backwards. How about we go this way? You know, like I love your thought process here, but actually I think we should do this. But because you journaled it, you have a debrief on it. And I love that feedback there. What would you say on that on the training side, Coach?
You can add another dynamic to what you were just saying. If I'm working with a young rider on an 85, it's not if we're going to a 125, it's when. If they're on a 125, it's not if they're going to go to that 254 stroke. It's a matter of when. And one of the biggest mistakes, and this kind of fits in with the whole theme of today's conversation about getting ready for next year, where everybody wants to go faster. My biggest concern when I teach a performance camp, my average improvement when I do a performance camp, the average improvement I see, I'll take 20 riders, the average improvement is 7 seconds a lap faster. Right? Now, I'm not a riding coach. I'm not an ex-pro. But I know enough about physiology, and I see what people are doing to fight against the law of physics on a motorcycle. I refer to it as a moving gyroscope. But here's my biggest concern on day number 2 of a camp. I've shown you yesterday how to go faster, but I'm not sure that you're strong enough to manage the speed we just created. You don't have the brain processing capabilities to process the speed that we just discovered. You didn't show up with enough food in your body. You're not strong enough to handle the bike. And what you were saying, Derek, all these settings that you worked, you tried, they didn't work. And it wasn't that it didn't work for those conditions. You add the complexity of, hey, you finally hit puberty. You're now 7 pounds heavier than you were last year at this time. The bike handle is completely different. The settings, even before the gate drops, your settings are different. How quickly that suspension is going to compress and rebound. 7 pounds heavier? It's a completely different playground.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand, like all the way that you articulated it, Derek, you let this pressure out, you stiffened this, you sped up this, you slowed down this for these reasons, now add a 7 to 10 pound difference, because that's where you'll be a year from now with puberty. You want to get leaner. You want to drop some body fat. Well, good news is you're leaner, you're stronger, and you're faster. But the bad news is you're leaner, you're stronger, and you're faster, because it just pulls back another opportunity for challenges. Hey, you're 8 pounds heavier because over the last year, you've been really good on your diet. You've been consistent in the gym. You've displaced body fat with muscle. Congratulations. Well, now all of a sudden you can be aggressive through the braking bumps, but you don't have that ability to process when to get the lean angle to get the bike over. You don't have inner thigh strength to hold the foot up, so therefore you're dabbing, and now you say your corner speed's off. It has nothing to do with that. You're coming in faster. You're, like RJ was saying, you're able to get on the brakes later. You don't understand lean angle, but because your hamstrings are so tight, they keep pulling your foot down to the ground. Your quadriceps are not strong enough to keep your foot up. Your adductor from your knee to your pubic bone isn't strong enough to keep it pinned against the shroud. You dab your foot. So then you low slide.
RJ, early in the very beginning of the conversation, you said, and I loved it, you said, we're always chasing this 100% full basket, but you're usually a little overfull or a little underfull, because the reality is it's not possible to hit that. So I think it's the same as a bike setup. It's training. And our goal is to, instead of being overflow by 20% and underfilled by 20%, as we get better and better, our goal is to be closer and closer to that 100% margin all the time. But could you comment on that a little bit more?
So for me, it was balance. So I learned pretty young is that if my desire wasn't there, desires were 3 seconds. Flat out. If you want to go fast, you're easily 3 seconds faster. Then, man, as I said, I've been down in Florida. We raced Gainesville. Was there a week training there? Been my ass is chapped from running in the sand all the time. I'm smells like mold in my nose because I've been in Florida hotels. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I've been gone. I just want to go home. You know what I mean? Oh, there's a break after Daytona. I just want to go home. Versus, man, I can't wait. I feel strong. I had good practice times. I know I could be better because we did this change, that change, and all different stuff. So trying to peak that. So what I found is that for me is that I had to have the right amount, what Rob says, work hard, play hard, but I didn't play too hard. Like I would go out, you know, and I would go out with my friends and that one night I would go out and have fun and dance and chase girls and whatever, what I would do. And I would close my drapes. And I go, I'm going to wake up when I wake up. And then I would wake up in the morning. I'm like, oh shit, it's 9 o'clock. Oh my God. And I would have a sense of guilt. All right. So what did I do? When you're guilty, you try to overcompensate. So I would work harder the next couple days, you know, to make that up. The other thing is that there was days that I would go out and I used to tell my dad, I'm like, I'm not focusing. And he goes, what do you mean? Because I think good racers just have that laser focus on a rut that's this tall, you know, on a hard packed California track that you can hold on to, and you see a little moisture waking up and you're able to find that and see all these different things. It just happens really quick. And you really focus on these things and you drown it out. So it's getting in the zone, the flow, whatever you want to say. There's days I would go out there and I would just be like, you know, that comfortable stare you get when you're like, what are you looking at? I'm looking at everything, but I'm not looking at anything. And I used to push past. I'm like, I just got to ride. That doesn't matter. My dad was like, Mark Barnett did a 5-gallon of gas every day. That's what you got to do. And so I would try to push past it. Almost every time I would fall and get hurt. Not massively hurt, but enough to where, you know, my knee's a little sore. I can't jog away. I can't do this, can't do that. Then I got to a point where I'm like, I would go out, try to get my flow going. It doesn't happen. I put my bike in the thing and I would leave. I'd go spin on the bicycle, do something that I could be. I'm not dumb, but you know what I mean? It doesn't take that split second, you know, thing. And then the next day I was back to where I needed to be because I didn't wear myself out. And the reason I started doing that was because, funny, David Bannon and I talked about it. It's amazing. You get sick, you get the flu, you have a fever all week, you lay in bed, watch TV, eat antibiotics and just doing nothing. But then you go to the race and you haul ass. You feel fantastic. And so to me, it was okay. More isn't always the way to go. Brock Glover, David Bailey, John O'Mara, Jeff Ward, Bob Hanna, also Mark Barnett. Those guys, I think, overtrained. And so where I could beat those guys, and they beat me plenty of times, but where I could beat those guys was and Brock Glover would say this, at the 28-minute mark, I could pull energy out and do a 2-second a lap faster. I had that ability or that lack of of common sense that I could just push it and go into anaerobic and be okay with it. Because I carried a little bit more fat. I was 185 pounds and all the different stuff. So that's where I found when I got to where when I sat on the starting line, I wanted to race. When I went out and practice, I wanted to go fast. I could feel the handlebars in my hands. It felt good. I was enjoying it. That's how I knew I was 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And if the bike was at an 8, I could make a couple small adjustments, get it closer to 10, and then make it work. You know, so that was a key for me.
That's cool. Well, guys, I can't believe a 90-minute window has gone by this quickly. RJ, we said we'd only keep you for 60, so thank you for sticking around with us.
Can I ask Derek a final question?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So when's the last time you rode a motorcycle, RJ? And what did you ride?
I was in India. It was a collaboration with Stark and Royal Enfield, and we were up in the Himalayas riding adventure bike. So my wrist doesn't move at all, like 0 down, 0 this way. So I twist the throttle like that.
Okay.
And I've been to like a big poo-poo of like electric bikes and all this different stuff. Electric bikes are fun. They are. There is no power dip there. I mean, it is 100% linear. You're always in the right gear. They're a blast. You could take someone that doesn't know how to ride, and it's just like you're having fun right now. crazy fast. But yeah, that was the last time I rode it. So I've been doing adventure bikes, and I still ride dual sport. I won't go on a track anymore because that elbow is forward, that position. When I get over the bar, when I got to twist the throttle, I gotta do this, and basically I gotta let go of it. It puts me in a spot that I crashed, and I'm tired of crashing.
I appreciate, that's awesome. Do you still have fun when you got to ride those? Was that still like kind of brings back the fun?
I've done full circle, and that's why I'm doing my tours and riding, is because I want to get people like Coach. You grew up riding, right? And saying, so get him and let's go ride. I did the adventure rally, KTM adventure rally in Australia, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, mate, not enough single track." I'm like, you know what? I don't mind going down the tarmac or the highways. I don't like being 4 lane, but I like to sightsee, because when I'm on a motorcycle, all of my senses are there. When the temperature changes, I feel it. When I go through an orange grove, I smell it. When I, go through cow fields, I smell cow shit. When it gets wet and humid or whatever, I'm constantly, I'm part of it. When I'm in a car, I'm relaxing. I don't care. I got an airbag. When I'm on a motorcycle, I come to an intersection, I look, and look again, because if I get hit by a car, I'm going to lose. So what I love about riding a motorcycle is that you have to be present. You can relax. Like when I'm cruising on the road, I just, just kind of roll and do my things. I'm not on edge. I'm not scared. So I'm not in that attack position the whole time, but I'm aware. And I think that's a beauty that we as men need. Not, you don't have to be at a pro level. Like people go, "Oh, I raced, but I wasn't at your level." So what? When the ground's just as hard for you when you crashed,
Right.
it was probably more scary for you than it was for me, because you rode like shit, including your control the whole time. So my purpose right now in life is to help guys get back on motorcycles, because motorcycles, I'm gonna leave it with this. Motorcycles do two things that is just beautiful. They make a little boy feel like a man, and they make an old man feel like a little boy. So
Right.
when I get on there, I'm not 61, balding with gray hair, with fused joints and knee replacements. I'm just a kid out riding. And so I'm out there with my buddies. We're making fun of each other. We're helping each other climb hills, find new trails, and do shit like that. So just keep that dream alive.
That's awesome. Derek, how about yourself, buddy? Anything in closing?
No, he said everything really well there, and I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for being on the show. So same to you, Rob. I really appreciate everything that we're putting together here.
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. Feeling is mutual. RJ, thank you very much for your time. Our friends at Energy Fuel, thank you for putting this together for us. And for all of you who are new, welcome to the show. For those of you that have been supporting us from the beginning, thank you so much for your support. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them here in the comments below. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will see you next month. Thanks so much.